What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast. I'm Phil Perry. We have a lot to get to, so let's get to it very quickly. We need to have a very structured podcast today. Okay, everybody, because we have a conference call with Daniel Jeremiah with a number of Patriots topics that he hit on. The great Daniel Jeremiah does a phenomenal job breaking down the draft each and every year for NFL media, friend of the podcast. He met with over 100 football writers from across the country to talk about the upcoming combine and the draft later this spring. So we're going to get some sound from him that you will appreciate. We're also going to get to my latest mock draft and what I have the Patriots doing that you might hate. And then we're also going to spin forward just a tad because the combine does start this week. So I want to give people a little bit of a sneak peek into who I'm expecting based on some of the conversations that I've had to light it up in Indianapolis. And we're going to take, obviously, a Patriots-centric focus as far as the combine goes. So let's get right into it first with Daniel Jeremiah, who I had a chance to ask about the Patriots receiver group that's currently in Foxborough, or at least under contract. You're talking about Devontae Parker, you're talking about Kendrick Bourne, and you're talking about Tyquan Thornton. And if there's a receiver at number 14 overall, because I've done it, and I know others have as well, been mocking receivers to the Patriots left and right. But is there a receiver at 14 overall who complements what the Patriots already have under contract at that position as things stand at the moment? That means maybe no Jacoby Myers. Here was Daniel Jeremiah's answer. We'll talk about it as soon as he's done.
I have a Patriots question for you. Right now, guys under contract, they have Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, and Tyquan Thornton. Seem like guys who have pretty different skill sets, but I'm curious if at 14, and I know you said it's not an excellent maybe receiver class, but is there somebody available at 14 who might complement that group that they may be interested in?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Should they be in the complement issue or should they be in the substitute issue? I mean, that's kind of the predicament that you're in. I think you want the best one available, and I don't think there's anybody that's, in my opinion, that's dominant or good enough in that group that you would have to play off of their skill set. I think you just want the best one. So to me, I look at, if you're looking for high volume, catches and productivity, you can make a case for Jackson Smith and Jigba because he's just got a really good feel. He works really good in the middle of the field. We know the success they've had with guys like that. So that one, I could see making sense to me. I just would want the best overall guy, and that's, in my opinion, is Jordan Addison, just because I think he's a complete route runner. I think he gives you burst and explosiveness, make plays over the top. And I think he's got outstanding hands. So that to me would be the place that I would go. But yeah, it's one thing if you've got a premier A1 level player and you're like, okay, we got to find the complement to this. It's like, I don't know. Substitute's okay there as well. You just need to find the best guy.
Not exactly the strongest of endorsements there for the Patriots receiving core from Daniel Jeremiah. Why would you want to compliment any of those guys? We should be talking about replacing those guys, essentially, is what he tells us. And he likes Jordan Addison as his favorite receiver in this year's draft class. A little bit undersized, about 175 pounds and about 6 feet tall, so very, very lean. They already have one of those, in my opinion, in some ways. And Tyquan Thornton, I think Jordan Addison is a much different player in terms of his skill set and his polish and his hands. But that would be the route that Daniel Jeremiah would take if Jordan Addison was available. I still do look at it, though, that the Patriots are looking at their depth chart across the board. And, of course, if there is an overwhelming talent that's available to them at number 14 overall at any position, that they could ignore in some ways what they already have. But I think they're trying to fill out their roster at that receiver position with different skill sets, different body types. And so I'm not sure that necessarily they would be looking at somebody who to me would be a Z type receiver in Jordan Addison if they feel as though Kendrick Bourne is that guy and should be that guy. And in my opinion, he should be. Now, his 2022 season wouldn't necessarily indicate that they have huge plans for him in 2023. But all that being said, Jordan Addison, is such an intriguing player that if they decided to go with him, I would be all for it. I'm just not sure that's how the team will look at it. Okay, so the next Patriots-centric topic that Daniel Jeremiah hit on was just listing 5 guys who came to mind for him as Patriots types. You're going to hear The great Karen Garigian asked her question here from the Boston Herald, and Daniel's answer.
I was just curious, when you look at this class, who are the 4 or 5 prospects that look most like Patriot type players to you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Patriot type players. Well, I mean, Peter Skoronsky, I'll just kind of go down through the list here. Witherspoon from Illinois, because they value, ball skills and instincts and awareness so much in the secondary. He definitely fits in that regard. I would give you Keon White as one because of the versatility up front. He's almost 6'5", 280 pounds, and he could be an edge setter, which they've always valued, the physicality to set the edge in the run game. Trying to find body types like Willie McGinnis going all the way back. It's hard to find guys that are that big and that strong that can still move. So he would be one I would say that kind of fit that profile, a real smart player as well. Let me give you another one here. Van Ness from Iowa. Obviously, you have the connection there with Kirk Ferentz and Belichick, so he's always going to be comfortable with Iowa players, and he's a big physical defensive lineman who can move inside, outside. So those are some guys I think that would be, good overall fits. And then if we want to go to the non-power 5 offensive lineman that they hit on last year with Cole Strange, why not go back and go with Mauk there, Cody Mauk from North Dakota State. Again, versatility, bunch of different positions, highly tough, highly intelligent, Patriot type guy.
So those first couple of names that he listed are names that we have attached to the Patriots in some way, shape, or form already in the first couple of months of the offseason here. And Peter Skoronsky from Northwestern, the offensive tackle who might be kicked into guard. It sounds like his arms are going to be a shade under 33 inches. So length, not necessarily there for Skoronsky, but otherwise very, very solid along the offensive line. Then you have Devin Witherspoon from Illinois, physical, great ball skills, comes from that Brett Bielema program. We talked about him before on the podcast. Seems like a great Patriots fit. Not sure either of those guys will be there at 14 overall. Then he listed an interesting name there in Keon White out of Georgia Tech, 6'5", about 275 pounds. This is somebody who is almost Dietrich Wise sized. Now, again, the length there will be interesting to find out at the combine, what his arms measure. I doubt he's going to be quite as long as Dietrich Wise, but a true power player on the edge. And the Patriots have been open to those types of guys in the past, even though it does feel like they've been more of a 3-4 style defense rather than a 4-3 style defense. And we can shake our heads at that and say it doesn't matter, but coaches do have their preferences. And over the last few years, it does feel like they've been more of a 3-4 style team or an odd front sort of style team as opposed to an even front style team. So it'd be interesting to see if he would fit in their mold at the size that he's at. He seems sort of like a base end in a 4-3 type of defense, but rare traits. And if you're picking at number 14 overall and you feel like you've got somebody who's rare there and he's transferred, he was a tight end early in his career, he missed some time. So he may be devalued for a number of different reasons, whereas the Patriots might look at him and say, don't tell me what he can't do. Tell me what he might be down the road, because he's finally able to get on the field consistently, get with some good coaching, and turn those rare traits into something special. That would be an interesting match there with Keon White. Also mentioned Cody Mauk out of North Dakota State. He does feel like a fit as well because of that versatility that Jeremiah mentioned. I believe they had him play some center at the Senior Bowl. This guy's just tremendous, just a walking meme. Long hair, no front teeth. I don't know if he's quite on Quinn Miner's level with the pancaking small trees in the woods. Friend of the podcast, by the way, Quinn Miners. Was a blast to get to talk to him a couple of off seasons ago. But Cody Mauk makes a lot of sense as a Patriots fit. And the last name DJ mentioned there, Lucas Van Ness. I'm not sure he's going to make it to 14. He's expected to light up the combine. All kinds of explosiveness, very twitched up kind of athlete. Again, guy who you'd use as maybe sort of a base end off the edge. Another, I would say probably more explosive version of a Dietrich Wise type, where he's about 275 pounds and you can play him on the edge on early downs. You could kick him inside on third down. Again, things that they've done with players here in the past. So he does feel like a fit from that perspective. I'm just not sure he's going to be there at 14 overall. Okay, let's get to our last Patriots related Daniel Jeremiah nugget. This is a question that was asked by the Globe's Ben Volant about the tight end group. Supposed to be a great tight end class. Daniel Jeremiah very high on that position group in this year's draft. Here's what he had to say in terms of whether or not 14 would be a little too early to start the run on tight ends this year.
Very intrigued by your comment on the tight end position. Tell me why you love this year's tight end class. How many could you see going in the first round? The Patriots have the 14th pick. Is that too high for a tight end? Please break it down for me.
Yeah, it's not too high for me. In terms of the number of guys, I can kind of count them up here. So let me just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I have 11 tight ends that I have top 3 round grades on, which is ridiculous number. It is just a really, really good group. And to me, I know he's coming off of an injury right now, and I know he's kind of more of a flex tight end. But Dalton Kincaid from Utah I think he's a big time player. I think he's one of my favorite players to watch in this draft. I think he's one of the best players in the draft. He's just sudden in everything that he does. He separates. He's outstanding after the catch. He can win on contact over the middle of the field. He's really, really good after the catch. As a blocker, he's going to more shield you and wall off. I don't like, when you compare guys to all-time great players, but just in his movement stuff, he kind of looks like Kelsey, just the way he moves in and out of breaks. He's a really, really good player. I think he's, I really like Zach Ertz when he was coming out, the year he was coming out. I think he's a better version of Zach Ertz. So he's up there. You've got Mayer, who's just an all-around tight end, not going to be real dynamic out of Notre Dame, but he is kind of the king of the combat catches. He's got a good feel on option routes, just keeping guys on his back and kind of walling them off and making plays. But a good overall tight end, good blocker. Darnell Washington is massive from Georgia. He's like playing with a 6th offensive lineman in the run game, and he's still developing and learning in the pass game. I think there's more there. Obviously, they had the best tight end in the country there in Bowers, who's just an absolute freak show. So he doesn't get as many balls as he would in another offense, but he's really intriguing. Musgrave from Oregon State's going to probably run in the low 4.5s at 255 pounds. He could go in the first round. I mean, then you start going through the list. Laporta from Iowa, Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State. You get Davis Allen from Clemson's intriguing. Payne Durham from Purdue. Schoonmaker from Michigan. Strange from Penn State. Wiley from Cincinnati. Those are the 11 guys. It is a really, really good group.
Now, the 2 names I want to highlight as potential Patriots fits, I think all of those guys would be players that the Patriots would be interested in. Some news today, actually, though, that Dalton Kincaid out of Utah suffered a fractured back late last season. He played through it, but he's not going to be testing at the combine, which is a little unfortunate because I think he's a great athlete, really fun prospect to watch in terms of his ability just to catch the football, find open space, move with the ball in his hands after the catch. I mean, this guy is a really, really good player. And another one I'm not sure will be there, even with the fractured back. At number 14 overall, Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. He was sort of the consensus number 1 tight end in the class going into the season. Not sure he did anything to move people off of that spot this past year. But again, somebody that I think evaluators are intrigued to see just in terms of just how athletic he is, especially relative to the rest of this class, because Luke Musgrave clocked one of the fastest GPS times at the Senior Bowl, period, across positions at 250 pounds. This guy is big, fast, explosive. He played multiple sports before college. He played lacrosse. He was a skier, track guy. So, okay, that lacrosse background with the athleticism, with the size, okay, that's the name that we should be thinking about when it comes to the Patriots. I don't know if he's going to end up being a first-round pick or a second-rounder, but out of Oregon State, Luke Musgrave is a name we need to keep an eye on. The second tight end name that I think is especially relevant to Patriots followers would be Darnell Washington out of Georgia, because this guy will be near 270 pounds, 6'6", absolutely a behemoth at that position, at a position where nowadays, you have guys that are playing at 6'3", 235 pounds. And for the Patriots and for Bill Belichick, who's still as adaptable as he's been in certain areas when it comes to coaching this sport, I think he still does love players who are big, strong, and athletic. And you watch Darnell Washington hurdle a couple guys this past season for Georgia, and he's not even the best tight end on his own team, but that's saying a lot because he had the best tight end in the country there for the Bulldogs. But this guy could be really special as a blocker and as a receiver who is a bear to bring down after the catch. So Darnell Washington is somebody, again, maybe he ends up being a first-round pick because maybe he has a phenomenal week at the combine in terms of some of the numbers in his testing. And so maybe he's not available to the Patriots, but those are the two names that feel like really good Patriots fits to me right now based on their size and their athleticism. Bill Belichick says it doesn't matter the position. So-and-so, those types of guys don't grow on trees. Well, that's Luke Musgrave and that's Darnell Washington at a position that has proven over the years. If you follow at MathBomb on Twitter, who's great with the relative athletic scores that he puts together all the time, every single year for years and years and years now, the tight ends that tend to have the most success in the league aren't necessarily the most productive guys at the collegiate level. They're the most athletic guys, the biggest guys who are also athletic. That's what you should be looking at that. That's what you should be looking for, at that position. That's what Darnell Washington and Luke Musgrave are. Let's run through a few more names of players that are going to be at this year's combine that are going to be working out starting a little bit later this week that I think really could blow the doors off of Lucas Oil Stadium in Indy. Let's start again with positions that the Patriots will, I think, really be considering. And this is another name that we've connected to the Patriots in the past in mock drafts. It's Quentin Johnson from TCU. In terms of big-bodied receivers, this guy is the best in this year's draft class. 215 pounds at 6'4", and he is expected to perform tremendously in Indy. Talking about maybe a 40-inch vert, 120 plus inch broad. I mean, I think the biggest thing at the combine for him, he may run in the 4.4s at that size. That's incredible. It's rare. And it's why, even though he has some hands issues, more drops than touchdowns last year, he could still be drafted inside the top 12 picks come the spring. Now, I think the most intriguing facet of the week for him will be the gauntlet drill, where you're running down and you're getting passes thrown at you. You have to turn and you're trying to run straight down the line, and you have footballs coming at you from all angles there. For somebody like Quentin Johnson, who does have some questions about his hands, I think that drill and just how fluidly he catches the football and how often, if at all, he body catches the football, which is not what you're looking for, obviously, in that drill. I think those could be interesting aspects to his week in Indianapolis. So Quentin Johnson is somebody I want to see in Indy for a variety of different reasons, both good and potentially not so good. How about Jalen Hyatt from Tennessee? He might be the fastest receiver in this year's draft class. It could be down to him and Tyler Scott from Cincinnati. Again, undersized guys, true deep threats. I think Jalen Hyatt has phenomenal hands. He's been compared to as sort of a Will Fuller type, where he has one trick, but that one trick is really valuable. I just wonder if, again, with some good coaching, and once you get to the next level, if you can take that athlete and mold him into a route runner, even if you can't, he could really affect defenses and how they are deployed against you. And again, because he is a legitimate threat with his hands down the field and he tracks the football so well, there's a place for him early in this draft. I think he's probably going to end up being a second round pick, but it wouldn't shock me if somebody decided to take a chance on him a little bit earlier than that. And then maybe Tyler Scott goes a little bit later. But again, these are real legit speed demons in this year's draft class. Okay, let's stick on the offensive side of the ball here. We'll knock out some different positions offensively. We talked about some of the tight ends already. Luke Musgrave, I think, is going to put on a show. Michael Mayer, again, I'm interested to see how he tests, how athletic is he compared to others. At tackle from BYU, Blake Freeland was a big track guy back in high school, so that would be an interesting one to watch. I think maybe not necessarily in terms of the athletic testing, but in terms of some of the measurements. We mentioned Peter Skoronski, how long are his arms? Broderick Jones, how much does he weigh? Because it sounds as though, he may not be right at 300 or 310 or wherever you're hoping your offensive tackles to be. Now, he's young. He's relatively inexperienced. He's huge upside. His ceiling is incredible, and it might be the highest of any tackle in this year's draft. But coming out of Georgia, Broderick Jones, really fast, really strong. I think he's going to test really well. I just wonder what his size is in terms of his weight. And do teams look at him and understand that they'll be able to bump that up? Because of where he's at in his playing career here. But that's a name that I'm going to be watching as well this week. When it comes to running backs, the name that everybody's going to be watching out of Texas A&M is Devin Achane. This guy is a legit track star. He doesn't just have a track background. This guy is a freaky sprinter. He's probably, I think people are expecting, which is wild to say. You don't usually expect running backs to run in this range, but I think people are expecting him to run in the 4.2s because of that track background that he has. So that'll be a fun one to watch when the running backs work out. I'm also interested to see Tajay Spears. You know, he's a little undersized, but he had a phenomenal combine. He had a phenomenal end of his career at Tulane, phenomenal bowl game. This guy has just been trending upwards steadily over the course of the last few months. And can he cap his offseason with a great workout in Indy? Because if he can, you know, he's probably not going to be the first running back off the board. That's going to be Bijan Robinson out of Texas. He's one of the best draft prospects at that position in recent memory. But Tajay Spears, maybe he ends up being the second or third back taken in this year's class. Might be hard to knock off Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama as the number 2 guy, but he should be in the conversation for number 3 there, Tajay Spears. Okay, let's talk about a couple prospects on the defensive side before we get to my first round mock draft, which is on NBCSportsBoston.com right now. Let's start up front. Mazi Smith is someone that we have thought about already this year because he was on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list. He's actually the first name listed in Bruce Feldman's Freaks list this year. 315 pounds, out of Michigan. He has some off-field stuff that he needs to get cleaned up and cleared by potential employers for next year, but special physical talent. And even though the on-the-field production might not be there the way that I thought it might be after reading that he was as high as he was on Bruce Feldman's Freak list, but again, these guys don't grow on trees. 315, 320 pounds to move the way Mazi Smith does is pretty special. So will be interesting to see how things go for him in Indy. How about sticking on the interior of the defensive line? Ade Adebawore out of Northwestern, only 6'2", 280, so undersized, but incredible athlete and good length, it looks like, at the position as well. So where does he end up testing? Does somebody see, again, one of these undersized defensive linemen? Anytime you see one of these, they're going to be compared to Aaron Donald. He's not Aaron Donald, but is he so special athletically that he ends up working his way up the draft board based on how he performs in Indianapolis? At linebacker, how about Trenton Simpson from Clemson? This is a guy who might be a first-round pick. I'm not sure that's necessarily where the Patriots should be looking with their first overall selection, but he could post some really intriguing numbers this week. Then there's Diane Henley out of Washington State, the linebacker who was a former receiver in college. Again, light, little bit undersized from a Patriots perspective, but maybe they need to go there. I mean, they tried, it felt like at times, with Mac Wilson and Raekwon McMillan and those guys that are a little bit lighter at the second level than what the Patriots are used to rolling out there, 250 plus pounds. Henley's certainly not that. But if they're looking for somebody who's going to be able to make plays in coverage, you can mix and match between him and all of your strong safeties that you like to use as linebackers at the second level, whether it's Kyle Duggar or Adrian Phillips or Jabril Peppers. If you decide to bring him back, this would be an interesting player that is something that the Patriots don't have. And even if he's not expected to perform defensively right away, he's the kind of guy that you could expect to play a lot on special teams, has played a ton of special teams in his career at Washington State. So it's not like it's something that he would have to learn on the fly in New England. Last linebacker I want to give you here before we get to some corners is Jack Campbell out of Iowa. Talk about a classic Patriots linebacker. Another Iowa connection. So you have that Kirk Ferentz stamp of approval, you would think, that Bill Belichick would be getting. I think Campbell could sneak into the first round because I think he's going to test really well. Evaluators are expecting him to be, I think, a little bit more athletic than maybe he's getting credit for, but he's also 6'4", 250 pounds. So we'll see where he measures up when he gets to Indy. So maybe he's a little bit lighter because he wants to test a little bit faster, but I think this is maybe the best inside linebacker in the draft. And so if the Patriots want to get a little bit younger there, if they want that next guy for whenever Juwan Bentley ends up moving on, although I thought Bentley had his best season last season, I really thought that inside linebacker by the end of the year was not an issue. Jelani Tavai, even as many of us scoffed at the fact that he earned an extension, those guys weren't a problem to me. But Campbell is intriguing enough that maybe you'd invest in that position anyway. Because again, I think he has the ability to diagnose, but he also has some physical ability that helps him get to where he wants to go and where he knows the play is going. So really interesting player there in Jack Campbell. How well does he test? When it comes to the corners, you start with Christian Gonzalez, who is maybe the height, weight, speed prospect of the entire draft. The corner out of Oregon, over 6 feet tall. He's going to blaze in the 40. He's going to be, I think he's still going to be great, even though he's a little longer. He's going to be great in the short shuttle and the 3-cone. I think he's going to end up being a top 10 pick, because players who are as athletic as he is and who have as much size as he does, and oh, by the way, the guy is probably arguably the best corner in this year's draft class. They don't last long, especially with the positional value being what it is at that spot right now. So Christian Gonzalez should be a lot of fun to watch. Kaya Blue Kelly is somebody who's going to be a great athlete as well, in my opinion. The cornerback out of Stanford, I think he's going to surprise some people with how well he tests. And he had some really impressive reps on Jordan Addison, believe it or not, in Pac-12 play this past year. So maybe he's somebody who steadily works his way up the mock draft boards as of right now. I think people are assuming that he's somebody who will be a late day 2, if not day 3 kind of selection, but with the right kind of performance in Indianapolis, he's somebody who could fly off the board a little bit earlier than people think. A couple more players in the secondary that I want to mention after having, I thought, really good Senior Bowls, and we'll do some more Senior Bowl specific stuff a little bit later in the process here. Weird schedule this year, but Sidney Brown, the safety out of Illinois, again, another Brett Bielema guy. Let's see how he tests at the safety position. Are the Patriots looking for a free safety? If they are, this guy's smart. He's physical. He's fast. It looks that way on tape, and I think he'll end up testing that way. So if Devin McCourty retires, maybe Sidney Brown is worth a look in the second round. And then Darius Rush, the corner out of South Carolina. We actually are going to have a conversation with Cam Smith, his teammate, another cornerback for the Gamecocks, and that's going to be on Next Pats for you very soon here. But Darius Rush lit it up at the Senior Bowl, and this is a angular, long, physical corner on the outside at 6'2" that I'm not sure how he's going to test, but he was so good in Mobile and some of the film that we were able to see in terms of mirroring receivers and running receivers' routes for them, that if he can put that kind of week together in Mobile and then go to Indy and do just as well and stand out, because everybody's looking at Cam Smith as the number one guy there, and rightfully so. He's another really good player. Maybe Darius Rush works his way up the rankings as well, as somebody that I've loved mocking to the Patriots on day 3, whether it's on the Pro Football Focus mock draft simulator or elsewhere, because that tends to be where he's available. That seems to be where people think he will go off the board. But if he performs well in Indy, that's somebody that's going to go earlier than you think. All right, that's our little preview of this year's Combine in terms of who are going to be some of the standout performers we'll end up seeing. I'm sure there'll be a name or two that we're not thinking about now that we will be thinking about moving forward because of how they test. This stuff all factors in. It does matter. As much as people would love to tell you that it's all about the tape and the tape's the only thing that matters, you do need to be a next level athlete, generally speaking, to be a good NFL player. I thought Clay Harbor, former Patriots tight end, had an interesting tweet today. He said, I went from undrafted to a 4th round pick because of how I performed at the Combine. He lit it up there and he wasn't expected to, and he made a lot of money because he did. So maybe it doesn't matter as much necessarily for those high end players, near the top of the draft, guys that you already know play football, played at a high level, played it at a high level at the college ranks. And you can easily envision him doing the same thing at the NFL. But for some of the lesser known names, a Darius Rush, for instance, or an Andre Yashevitz from Princeton, who's 6'3", 212, and he's expected to be a tremendous, another track guy, athlete at this year's Combine. Maybe he ends up making himself some money. So the combine's always a fun time. I will not be at the combine. We mentioned that on the Patriots Talk podcast. If you're listening to that podcast regularly last week, we have an addition to the family that's expected here soon. So won't be traveling out to Indy. Disappointed to be missing it out there in Indy. The entire NFL world descends on one city. I love Indianapolis, but they're all there. Scouts, GMs, coaches. It's a really good time. It's an interesting time to be covering the league because this is when a lot of the free agent discussions start to happen. We know the legal tampering period doesn't start for a long time here, but it starts in earnest in Indy, whether it's on the books or not. So there's always some nuggets to pull from there. We'll be working the phones as much as we can with people that are in Indianapolis and trying to find out as much information as we can so that we can share it here with you on Next Bets. But I did lastly want to just get to our mock draft, or our most recent first round mock draft that's on NBCSportsBoston.com right now. One thing evaluators will tell you, and this is the mindset that I brought to this most recent mock, is that we're not stacked with blue chip talent at the top of this year's draft class, especially once you get maybe outside of the top 10 or 12 or so picks. You're talking about a group of players from that point through maybe even the 40 to 50 pick range that are all pretty similar in terms of talent level. And that happens from time to time, from year to year. So it's not incredibly unusual for there to be a little bit of a lack of blue chip talent, but it does hurt, in my opinion, when you're a team like the Patriots this year, which is picking at 14 overall, and you would love to maybe inch your way up the board to get one of those blue chip prospects, but maybe you can't. And so you sit at 14 and you see what falls to you. And if you're looking at it the way we know they do, in terms of your clusters and the players that you like, if you get to 14 overall and there's 8 or 9 players that you feel would really fit your program well, and that in terms of the value they would bring to your organization, there's not so much of a discernible difference that you want to pounce on one right there at 14. Well, what do you do if you're Bill Belichick? You maximize the value of that pick and you trade down. And if you hate me for even suggesting it, I get it, but we always do one of these mock drafts each and every single offseason because we know how the Patriots operate. And Bill Belichick, to his credit, I'm not sure he gets credit for this, but he's traded up almost as often as he's traded back. We'll have to update the numbers and make sure that we have everything added in from last year, but it's almost an exactly even 50-50 split between trades up and trades back. So in this version of the mock draft, we have them trading back from number 14 overall to number 21 overall with the Los Angeles Chargers. A couple of years ago, they traded back with the LA Chargers, and they actually traded all the way out of the first round and ended up picking Kyle Duggar. He was their first pick in the 2020 NFL draft. They don't do that this time around. They just moved down 7 picks to get that Chargers pick at number 21 overall. And the way I actually had it shake out was that they sent number 14 overall and 2 of their 4th round picks to LA to get LA's first and LA's second. So you would end up, when it's all said and done, with still a pick in the 4th round, because they have 3 there as it stands right now. But you'd also have a first round pick at number 21 overall, and you'd have 2 second round picks, which again, in a year like this one, where the talent between 14 and 50 might be relatively similar, maybe those second round picks carry a significant amount of value. So that to me felt like a pretty good deal for the Patriots. The way the draft fell, they actually had a chance at Jordan Addison at number 14 overall, but Peter Skoronski was off the board. Broderick Jones was off the board. Christian Gonzalez was off the board. Devin Witherspoon was off the board. You can see the details on NBCSportsBoston.com. But at 14 overall, they move all the way down, and they hope that they can get one from their cluster, at least, how I envisioned it. I guess it would be my cluster in that case. And they did. They ended up getting the receiver out of Ohio State, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Now, would he be my first choice at that position in this year's draft class? Probably not. I would take a chance on Quentin Johnston's hands because I think his ability is so rare that if you feel confidently enough in his ability to actually catch the football, he's one of these guys who's always open. And he's one of these rare physical specimens, almost like a DK Metcalf. I don't know if he's going to test quite that well, but in terms of just being able to outmuscle, outrun, outjump other people that are paid as handsomely as these guys are in the secondaries across the NFL to go and get the football, there's not that many of them on the planet, and Quentin Johnston might be one. But I will say this about Jackson Smith and Jigba. For a Patriots offense that looks like it will truly value that slot position under Bill O'Brien, because we've seen Bill O'Brien operate in this offense in the past. And yes, he took it over when Wes Welker was already established here. But for him to be able to understand how to utilize that slot position as well as he does in the old, quote unquote, old Patriots offense, I think somebody like Smith and Jigba could have massive, massive value, especially if Jacoby Myers ends up moving on as a free agent, because he's going to get paid somewhere else a little bit more than the Patriots might be willing to offer. I think that's a very real possibility this year, even if the Patriots are hoping to bring him back, which it's my understanding they are. Smith and Jigba is 6 feet, might be a little bit over that. We'll see at the combine. He's about 200 pounds, so he's not one of these slight, smaller, undersized guys like an Addison or like a Zay Flowers out of BC. Again, really impressive, really fast, really dynamic receivers, but he has size that I think the Patriots would covet in the first round. Really tough, really hard to bring down when he's in the open field. He doesn't have the breakaway speed, it looks like, at least, that some of these other receivers in the class might. But that's not why you'd be drafting him. You'd be drafting him to play on the interior and give Mac Jones all the easy buckets he can handle. And again, in Bill O'Brien's offense, with the quarterback that you have who will take those easy throws, who will take that profit when it's presented to him, I think because he's just wired that way. I think that's how smart quarterbacks play. It's how Tom Brady played for 20 years here. I think that could have massive value here in New England. So is he going to stretch the defense? Is he going to force safeties out of the box and make it easier on your run game the way somebody like Quentin Johnston will? No, but he's going to be reliable, effective, tough. I think he could end up being, a huge producer in this Patriots offense. So I like that fit. Patriots aren't often drafting players highly out of Ohio State, but Jackson Smith and Jigba to me is a fit at 21 there, and you add some extra draft capital on top of it. Not a bad deal for Bill Belichick. Again, to check the whole mock draft and to shred me for it, if you so choose, you can do that in the comments below, obviously, but head on over to the website, NBCSportsBoston.com. We got all the details there. All right, guys, thanks so much for sticking around and listening. Enjoy the combine this week. We'll talk to you very, very soon here on Next Pats.